Okay, missed the first two set of squats. Not happy about it, but that can't stop the news. Kevin Roos, New York Times. OpenAI and DeepMind executives, Jeffrey Hinton, and over 350 others release a statement saying mitigating AI extinction risks, quote, should be a global priority, unquote. Yeah, we've had extinction risks as a species for longer than I've been alive. Nuclear weapons. There are many people who compare what we call AI today to nuclear weapons. Obviously, they're much more prolific than actual nuclear weapons. I don't think there's a whole lot else to say here, though. Do many people feel that there should be some type of organized effort amongst the people of humanity, people of planet Earth, let's say, to come together and organize so we can mitigate these extinction risks? I'm not holding my breath. Nicole Carpenter, Polygon. A viral clip from Nintendo's Tears of the Kingdom shows Link unfurling a bridge, wowing game developers. Nintendo reportedly spent a year polishing the game. I watched the clip. It's great, don't get me wrong, but in viewed without any context of this Zelda game or prior Zelda games, it looks a lot like Portal. It looks like what happens when game designers say, what if we just provided some core concepts within a world that has a familiar physics model and sprinkled in a little bit of magic, and then we let the player do whatever they want. And it turns out that's a recipe for a lot of entertaining play. Portal, great example. And it seems to me that Zelda is a similar example. Is it possible to build more complicated things in Zelda than in Portal? Yes, of course. We've come a long way since Valve released those games. I talked to my brother this past week, who's much more of a gamer than I am and a huge Zelda fan. And the descriptions of what's possible in the game are wonderful, delightful. It's telling to me that another one of the characteristics of this Zelda game is there's no way to interact with other human beings while you're playing the game. It is a one player thing. And I, for one, kind of miss that notion of gaming where it was about you in a virtual world exploring, coming up with solutions to challenges on your own, as opposed to what challenges exist when there are people on the red team and people on the blue team. Because it turns out, if we look at Call of Duty or Fortnite or even Mario Kart, the types of games can change, sort of the characteristics of the games can be very uh, can vary widely. I didn't have enough coffee this morning, but fundamentally the goal is the same in most online games: have more points at the end of a fixed period of time than the other team, and the way that you accrue points is to kill the other team members. I like that Zelda has so much success and it doesn't rely on that fundamental mechanic. And keep it up, Nintendo. Rohan Goswami, CNBC. Nvidia opens at a $1 trillion market cap, joining Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon after raising its Q2 revenue forecast due to AI demand. Nvidia stock is up 166.5% year to date. There's a part of me that is sort of pleasantly nostalgic, or it warms my heart in some irrational way that Silicon Valley continues to be Silicon Valley, right? The reason it got that name is it's where chip manufacturing in the United States, came into its own, and the idea that Nvidia is carrying that mantle forward, I like it. It's great. It's going to be interesting to watch the next year, the next 3 years, the next 9 years of progression to see, does Nvidia continue to have a lock on this, or is it possible that LLMs and the technologies that we bundle up and refer to as AI don't are able to be as successful and as performant on silicon that's built by businesses other than Nvidia? That'll be the interesting thing to watch. But in the meantime, congrats, Nvidia. You no doubt earned it. Wall Street Journal analysis of 460 companies that did SPAC deals, insiders at 232 sold $22 billion in shares in well-timed trades. Chamath Palihapitiya made over $300 million selling Virgin stock. The SPAC process, of my incredibly poorly educated understanding, creating some form of public entity or obtaining some form of publicly traded entity and then having that thing, I think, acquire the private entity as a way to make that business a publicly tradable thing as opposed to having to go the traditional IPO route. Is it going to come out in this report or in any additional ones in the years to come that this fundamentally was a mechanism utilized for a very small number of individuals to utilize their privileged information to advantage themselves as opposed to do what is best for the business and the marketplace? Maybe. Bloomberg CC data. Trading on Gemini dropped around 50% year over year to around $747 million in April. Keiko says trading fell 46% in January to April from September to December, around 6 times Coinbase's drop. I suppose on the one hand, we could look at this and just call it crypto malarkey and move on. On the other hand, maybe it's the ideal or sort of organic process of consolidation in this market, because it turns out that speculating on cryptocurrency and trying to make money on the arbitrage and the spread between currency A and currency Z doesn't provide that much fundamental utility, as opposed to our individual people using cryptocurrency to do the granular actions that roll up to be a well-functioning economy. Again, my canonical example always comes back to me. The day that I can go into town and pay for a cappuccino in cryptocurrency because the cafe uses cryptocurrency to pay its suppliers and its people, that's the day where there's utility that I don't think anybody can argue with. Before that moment in time, at least in the United States, because I understand that that exact use case is playing out in other parts of the world today, I don't see a tremendous amount of opportunity aside from finance knuckleheadry. No, crypto malarkey. Suvrashi Ghosh, Bloomberg. Binance names Richard Tang to run all regional markets outside the United States. A swift ascension for the executive that joined in August 2021 as CZ comes under fire. CZ, of course, being the initials for I think the founder, if not the CEO, probably both, of Binance. Is Richard Tang a earnest actor and is someone who will try to do the best for Binance, its shareholders, and the customers it serves in its market? I sure hope so. I would love for that to be true. That said, when the previous sort of public face of your business comes under an increasing amount of scrutiny, and then a person who is very recently hired slowly and then very quickly attains more public notoriety, there's a part of you that can't help but look at that and see strategic action. Crypto Malarkey. Financial Times. How the United States is increasingly reshaping the spyware market to favor companies selling cyber weapons to the United States and its allies, like Israel startup Paragon Solutions. This is cyber. Yeah, cyber weapons are more useful than traditional weapons. There are all manner of reasons to be unhappy and concerned and afraid and upset about the increased incidence of anything you could very broadly label as cyber warfare. That said, maybe we could get to a place where we at least stop causing murder and mayhem and chaos in the pursuit of geopolitical advantage. That would be a nice bit of forward progress. Of course, the unfortunate reality here is that if as a nation state you decide you want to enter into aggression against another state, I'm not sure that it's particularly high on your priority list to ensure that the average individual of the state that you're aggressing doesn't suffer. So we shall see. Gavin Bonsher, Anantech. ARM transitions to a comprehensive 64-bit platform with new mobile CPU core designs, Cortex X4, Cortex A720, and Cortex A520, built on its ARM v9.2 architecture. Talk about one of the greatest success stories of the last 30 years, maybe more. The efficiencies that ARM has been able to drive into semiconductors are fantastic. They're what enable us to carry supercomputers that are, the size of a deck of cards or a pack of cigarettes. Like, they're amazing. Aside from that, though, in reading this, it sounds like the fundamental move forward in these designs is maybe the complete sunsetting of 32-bit compatible aspects of the design. I'm not a chip person, though, so that's all I got. Asa Fitch, Wall Street Journal. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger says the company had, quote, serious issues in leadership, people, and methodology. Discusses the rough turnaround, competitors, and more. Seems like a theme in today's news, the businesses that make up the metal that all of technology relies on. Nvidia, the new darling. ARM, the thing that has carried the mobile industry single-handedly almost. And Intel, the business which had a near complete lock on the metal of computing machines when those devices were large enough that you needed to put them on a desk or in a rack? Do they still command meaningful presence in those areas? Yes. But how is the story of Intel going to be? You can't tell the story of Intel without spending a tremendous amount of time on how utterly and completely they missed the transition from computing machines needing desks to just needing pockets. And I sincerely hope that they've got more in the tank and that Gelsinger will be able to right the company and put them on a path toward being more than they are today, and ideally a meaningful competitor, because competitive markets produce better results for their end consumers, their customers. We shall see. Tom Warren, The Verge. Microsoft issues a temporary fix for Surface Pro 10 tablets after the device's cameras stopped working last week, most likely due to a faulty Qualcomm driver. Another one of the stories of the tech industry will be the Windows-based devices versus the devices born out of Redmond, Washington versus the devices born out of Cupertino, California. And the fact that Microsoft can ship devices into the market that they themselves assemble and they put their brand on and they stand behind, not the old OEM version of the business, although that version of the business still continues today. And more than 12 months in market, the software that controls whether or not the camera works on the device can just fall over. Apple devices don't have those type of problems. Do they have problems? Yes, of course they do. But a categorical difference is, to my knowledge, Apple doesn't trust anybody else to write the software that allows the operating system to communicate with the camera sensor. Maybe, if I remember correctly, most iPhones have camera sensors that are manufactured by Sony inside of them. Maybe Sony software lives somewhere inside of that component, but I kind of doubt it. Like, something tells me Apple is willing to take more effort and get closer to the metal in order to build the software stack that provides the experience to their users than Microsoft historically has been able to, had the will to, desired to. I'm glad that they were able to issue a temporary fix, but it's difficult to look at that and say, we're still doing this? We still have these types of failures because Qualcomm wrote the software for the webcam and Qualcomm software engineers were, I don't know, not up to the task. Maybe I'm being unfair. Bill Toulis, Bleeping Computer. MCNA Dental, one of the largest U.S. government-sponsored dental insurers, says hackers stole data of around 8.9 million people. Lockbit claimed responsibility for the attack. Not great. It's not clear, at least from this headline, what data was stolen, what data is compromised, what individuals should do as a result of that. Are they being notified by MCNA? Who knows? I hope all the right things are happening on that front. But for me, what's up, baby? The part of this story, any ransomware story at this point, is it illustrates a fundamental flaw in the Web 2.0 design of software, which is there's a server which is responsible for housing user information, and then there are satellite actors and clients that interact with that server. That's a castle and moat, security design, which I think crypto blockchain technologies can help address. I would like to believe that we will get to a point in time before I'm dead where I, as the individual, house the private and sensitive information about me. And I have means of exposing that information to my dental healthcare provider, dental insurance provider, selectively and in a specific way, right? One of my favorite examples here doesn't necessarily rely on cryptography or on blockchains is the ISO standard for a digitized state ID, digital driver's license. One of the aspects of that specification is you as the user, well, the specification allows for it. Who implements the specification has some say here. But in an ideal implementation, you're able to expose the one piece of data that you need to expose as opposed to all of it. Again, every time I'm standing behind the bar and I check someone's ID in order to confirm that they are of age to buy alcohol in the United States, I get to know their full name, their street address, how much they weigh, like all this information that I have no business having access to, but because of the mechanism that we have to work with today, I get access to it. We shouldn't live in that world. We should engineer better ways of doing things. And so every time I see a ransomware story that involves the private information of massive numbers of, people who didn't ask to be exposed in this way, this is what I hope for, is that we can get to solutions where it's my information. Let me steward it. Let me be responsible for exposing it as it needs to be. Bethan Staten, Financial Times. Chegg, Duolingo, and other ed tech companies insist generative AI has the potential to enhance their products, despite the threat of being undercut by cheap AI. I don't know what it would mean as a Duolingo to be undercut by cheap AI. The most obvious example there is cheap AI makes it that much easier to build a less than great knockoff of Duolingo and steal share, perhaps. But I'm inclined to agree with them. The positive potential, the upside potential in helping a human being learn to understand a language that they didn't learn as a child or previously in their lives, that software which fundamentally is about taking in natural language from a human being and spitting out natural language, because and in the blurriest of uh, characterizations, that's what these things are good at, right? I ask, how do I make risotto? It doesn't give me 10 blue links. It gives me a paragraph of English. Is that English true, accurate, trustworthy? All problems to go be solved. But I would like to believe that this is absolutely true, that a year from now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, the experience of utilizing software to learn another language is significantly better as a result of employing technologies like LLMs. I completely believe that that's possible. And I hope that it happens, because it would, human languages are beautiful things, and it would be a shame to have them all disappear because of the dominance of a small handful of them.